Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikhil Vadgama. I am co-founder and director of Exponential Science, one of the organizations that will be working with the UNDP on the deployment of the government blockchain academy. It is my pleasure to be sitting next to Robert Pasicko, team leader at the UNDP, and we're going to be talking about some of the great work that UNDP have been doing and trying to understand as well kind of the extent and the role that UNDP takes with it, what they view the implementation of blockchains in governments to be, and we're going to hopefully interweave the Government Blockchain Academy into getting aspects of the great work that you have done in the past. I'm going to also try and frame it around some of these problem areas that we've been, or use case areas that even the guys earlier just spoke about, particularly in the areas of digital trust, in the areas of payment and financial inclusion, in the areas of sustainability, decentralized identity, sustainability and tracking, and indeed even the future of work and digital skills itself. So let me start off by asking Robert, would you mind introducing yourself?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Robert Pasicko, co-founder of UNDP Alternative Finance Lab in 2015, so 10 years ago. Since then, been playing with these ideas and exploring, and currently leading the team, 20 people across continents, where we support UNDP and also working with other UN agencies and private sector and innovators on these really interesting topics, emerging technologies.
Cool, that's fantastic. So let's dive straight in and talk about these areas of digital trust, governance, and the UNDP's role. What should international organizations like the UNDP do in shaping ethical frameworks and governance for blockchain, especially in development contexts? And where is your role really starting and finishing, right? Can you talk a little bit about this?
Okay, sure. When it comes to ethical side of any technology, I mean, since the beginning of times, you could use fire to heat your space and to cook, but you could use the fire also to burn the village and make worse. So since then, it's with any technology we are getting, the more powerful technology is, there is just like a bigger potential to do something good, but also it's a bigger potential to do something bad. And now I believe that with emerging technologies, I like the concept of exponential technologies, how you have it in exponential science, because these things grow really exponentially. So the question is, do we want to use these technologies to make rich people more rich and to make powerful people more powerful? Or do we want to use these technologies to make the world a better place? Because we can do both, right? It's a technology doesn't care. Technology is just there. So, like recently, I've been in several books, podcasts, and talking with people who are like everything which is going on with AI, with blockchain, with all, like there is like some request that somebody there is out there, which is not Sam Altman, which is not Elon Musk. Somebody is there who thinks about who is really thinking about, okay, what is the ethical, what is the moral aspect, where do we want to get with this, do we just want to get to these greedy guys to do whatever they want? And I personally believe, like being now 16 years with UN, that UN should sit into this place, position itself, because this is why United Nations have been made, right? They are made that there are no more wars, that there is a development across nations. And really, like, do we want to give this power to? I know we at UN are sometimes slow and super regulated, and these guys maybe are not. But then it's again, so it's like, do we really want to just let it be whatever they want, or do we want to have a more inclusive approach, more kind of a human-oriented, human-centered approach?
And where does that, where does that end, right? I mean, we're talking about here, ethical frameworks, we're talking about stewardship, we're talking about guardrails that you've mentioned as well. But, are we going into implementation as well, or are we just saying and advising, right, with the UNDP's role? What do you think? I mean, what have you done?
Yes, I mean, look, first, when we started going deeper now with blockchain and now with AI digitalization, first we had to look at the mirror and look at ourselves. Okay, we don't know enough ourselves, right? So it's so for example, we have country offices in 170 countries. And that's why we invested in Blockchain Academy, because now, whenever we have a call with any country office, at the other side, we get a colleague who says, I was enrolled in your Blockchain Academy, so I know, and that's like a fantastic feeling. It's like somebody there speaks our language, and once again, it's not about technology, but it's really about getting deeper, getting involved in what is going on. And then if we can if we have this, then we can go deeper, and because every government today wants to make processes more efficient, more effective. They want to get more with the resources that they have. They want to have better lives for their citizens, and there are technologies which can help there. So definitely there is a promise of the industry that industry can deliver. We see ourselves as a bridge which will make it happen, right? Which can help for this to happen. So it's not me who will go into GitHub and do coding and proposing solutions, but it's me. It's actually, this is where we see our role, that we can connect fantastic people who are doing fantastic stuff, really good things, that they become more visible, that they really get connected with the government needs, and that the government understands, wow, these guys are doing something which can actually make the, traceability of the coffee in our area, so that this coffee has a better value, that it has the farmers have more salary, and it's more sustainable, and so that's the whole thing.
Sure, providing more quality in that example, for instance, right through the supply chain. And it's great that you started talking a little bit there just about, the Blockchain Academy, the acceleration work that you have done there as well, right? I mean, and the work we're going to do together in the Government Blockchain Academy itself. Talking about, the other area we've been looking at, which is kind of the future of work and skills. How do we think about, the UNDP, or the United Nations, role in capacity building as well, right? How do we turn these kind of national and local capacities so that, government can really actually leverage and ship out responsible pilots? Have you already seen some examples from the accelerator that you've been working on as well? I mean, not necessarily even in government, but even internally at the UN itself, right? Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yes, it's I mean, sometimes I hear discussions, why do we go with pilots? You don't need pilots, you just do the big thing immediately. Yeah, but I mean, this is the logic, like you say, we want to do a new big plane, let's do big plane immediately. Like, why would we do these pilots? Why would we play with them? Why would we put them in air tunnel and see how they... Yeah, this is the, You need to play a bit, you need to learn, you need to experiment in everything you do, right? It's otherwise it's super dumb, right? To do things that, I mean, anything else that you do in life, and especially like this. And so some of the first blockchain pilots in UNDP system, but we can see, for example, our colleagues in India started with putting spices on blockchain, just to have traceability where these spices in India are coming from, and they started with 150 farmers, for example, and then it got successful, because you had a traceability. You really could say, this is, I don't know, the cinnamon coming from that area, or this is the chili coming from that area, and then eventually, it led to, from 150, it got up to 2,000 farmers, right? So we got really scaled up, and now there is interest also with the Ministry of Agriculture there to put it to 200,000 farmers, right? So that it's like because once again, these technologies are exponential. If you can do something on 100, there are no barriers that just like you need basically not, you need just a very little bit of efforts and energy to make it maybe 1,000 times larger. That's the beauty of this. It can very easily become mainstream very soon. And if it works there, like, how can we just copy the same technology and, I don't know, put it somewhere and use it in Nigeria or somewhere else where, so that when you are buying something that you know exactly what you bought, and that these farmers get much better and much fair. I mean, still half of the world's population live from agriculture and depend on agriculture. So this is like it's really like a half of the population.
That's really interesting what you've been touching on there, right? About different solutions in different countries and how we can adapt them across, other nations as well, right? And I think this takes us on to the next kind of question we have here, which is around, best practices and indeed localization itself, right? Like, when you're talking about global best practices in public sector blockchain deployment, if we're thinking about verification, if we're thinking about decentralized identity and credentials, if we're thinking about programmable payments, what's your view on how countries with very different capacities are able to include these? If we have, some set of blueprints that we're seeing, a successful project in Nigeria, how are we translating that into being something that could be equally applicable in Guatemala, for instance?
Yeah, so I would say there are many potential use cases, and I mean, instead of immediately betting with your own money and with the money from the government, which they never have too much. So our idea, so at the moment we have a blockchain accelerator going on, and with 50 different countries. In 50 different countries, you have 50 different solution makers addressing some solution, some problem, right? And the idea is, let the horses run. Let's see which of them are really suitable in this country to deliver the results. And some will be more diligent, more slicky, and they will find a way to the sun, right? Some will be stopped by policy, by this or that reasons, and of course not each one is good enough, but we hope from this that we get at least 10-20 good examples that we can show, like the one I mentioned in India, with this process, that we can say, okay, let's learn from this guy. These guys managed, right? These guys made it, and let's find a way to scale them up in their jurisdiction, but also that we replicate them in some other jurisdictions if they are successful, that we find a way to, let's see what are the barriers that we can maybe, because once again, I don't think that it's that much about the technology, but like even bigger part of the equation is, it's a social challenge, right? How do we make, like if it's about, I don't know, now we are doing something with the city of Bogota in Colombia. So if we are able to deliver the social payments to citizens there, can we use the same model, I don't know, really in Nigeria or in Pakistan or somewhere? Like, what are the barriers? Like, are there any barriers? So like, if you do now, there is a work on a digital ID system in Bhutan, based on Ethereum. Once this is done, can you just use the same thing and bring it somewhere else? And then what are the benefits from this? Because at the end of the day, it's not just about having ID, but what do you do with having identity? Like with having identity, you are unlocking all the other perks that are there, right? And identity is just the prerequisite for you, that one day you can get a bank loan, because how can you get a bank loan if you don't exist? That you can get healthcare, that you can get some pension, that your kids can also have identity. If you don't, it's just like a starting point to many other things which make life as we know it. Otherwise, you are non-existent. You are invisible. Yeah.
Sure. It's interesting on this point of localization as well, and even localization can be difficult even within a geographical region itself, right? I mean, I think even we've had experiences of working in Latin America where we've seen kind of, some countries are very pro-adoption and very happy to put the technology in place, whereas other countries, you mentioned the word blockchain and it's you're asked to leave the room, right? So you've got these kind of two extremes, even that are close to each other. And I think one thing for localization as well that's important, that therefore is also regulation, right? And so part of the education aspect and part of the implementation is also working with the regulators so that they understand. And even just before on the panel that we had here, when they were, we had some regulators on the panel that were saying, blockchain is much more than crypto. Yeah, indeed, that does need to still be echoed in countries, because even when we've talked to regulators in certain parts of the world, it is still very much the danger of cryptocurrency that they see as the barrier to any use of blockchain that is present, even in financial services or others, because of just the same kind of, I don't know, old opinions that have pervaded and remain that are there, right? Talking again, something that you mentioned earlier in kind of the first part of our talk, this idea about, helping equality, reducing inequality as well. How do we see kind of, having blockchain policy frameworks that are in place that can actually, boost inclusion, protect citizens, right? That don't reinforce inequalities. What's your view on this?
Yeah, I would say, look, once again, if you know that today 1.3 billion people, for example, don't have access to financial services, right? So what does it mean for them, right? So it's like if they want to sell something, they can sell it just in the way how they did 2,000 years ago, right? And it's like, what kind of can they get? Can they participate in some larger economic life? They cannot, right? So it's like 1.3 billion means that it's really like a stone age. 1/3 of population today in the world doesn't have internet access. So every third citizen in the world, right? So once again, if we build solutions which are just for those who somewhere there is internet, it means that we excluded 1/3 of the population completely. And these guys need more support than others, right? So there is a question: how do we proceed with AI, with blockchain, with everything, without digital divide being just bigger and bigger? Because very easily we can just create I don't know, OECD part of the world, which is like super upfront, and several more developed countries like completely going up, and then half of the world or half of the population just lagging behind even more. And I mean, what kind of opportunities it means it gives to them just only if they live in a country which has some rare materials or gas or some resources, because themselves just selling their working ability in the time of robots, which is coming, of robotics, is just like what kind of a selling point do they have anymore, right? So and then it's like, I don't think that you can have a lasting peace in the world if there are people who live in such terrible poverty, who live in desperation. So we need equality in the world. And I mean, Nordic countries are the best place in the world from which we can learn how to create these things. Like, and I really admire, when I talk with my friends who and I did my PhD also in Norway for some time. So like it's like we have a lot to learn from these countries. And the question is, how can we bring the best lessons and try to put it everywhere else so that we have less people lagging behind?
That's a great view, and it's interesting you mentioned about AI there as well in this topic of inequality. I want to come back to that, but I come back to that as the last question. And just before we get there, these use cases we've talked about, and you've presented some of them as well. For example, the supply chain project that was working in India at the moment. Do you guys have a focus area, or you're just happy to work in each of these 5 areas? Where the governments are happy for solutions to be implemented, or is there kind of something that that you believe is more important, is the first thing to put in place, right?
So that's the whole idea behind our initiative to set up UNDP Blockchain Advisory Group, right? Where we invited industry leaders to come together and they can help us to shape, so what is the priority areas, right? So instead of, I don't know, like few of us sitting together in the room playing with post-its, asking AI what we should do, like we want to crowdsource this from the industry leaders who, like from the, this is where we are bringing together 25 most important, the most important blockchain organizations on the C-level, and basically discussing this, is this area something which is worth investing? Should we, if we have to invest in 2 or 3 priority areas for this year, what should it be? If there are 10 areas, what should it be? That's something that we are trying to get out of this process. And we have a fantastic response, actually, from these organizations. In last month in New York, during the UN General Assembly, we had a fantastic meeting between our acting administrator and C-level of these 25 organizations. And I'm really enthusiastic about this, that something like this can really draft the way forward, because we have to move from the mindset of competition into mindset of collaboration, right? Because competition just means that we are fighting for the same small cake, right? Which might be growing a bit, but it's still the same small cake. And collaboration means that we can make much larger cake for everybody, and then everybody gets a much bigger piece. And then it's about, do we have a trust in this that we can build it, right? So if we have enough organizations and people who believe that this is possible, then we will build it and we will have a bigger cake.
And I think it was fantastic participating in that blockchain advisory group, right? Where it was really nice to see actually getting all the different players around the table who are actually openly sharing, right? Rather than having silos of information, completely competing, we are cooperating to actually see the good come from initiatives that the UN are putting in place. And equally well, when we're talking about priority areas and focus areas, when we look at the Government Blockchain Academy, that is a combination of the research work that you guys have done, the research work that we are doing to identify where we think there's going to be the greatest impact of working with governments to deploy particular education and then implementation afterwards as well. There's one bit I want to end in, and you've touched on it a little bit, and we've discussed it a little bit as well, and I think it's nice to kind of end on this topic because everyone's talking about AI. I mean, when we touched on the topic of inequality, I think for certain everyone can acknowledge that the growth in AI is hopefully going to lead to much larger economic output in the future, but the question is always on the distribution of that economic output as well. Can blockchain help to make that distribution more equal? Do you think?
Once again, it's not anymore a technology problem. Right? It's like, do we want as a society to live in really having this world where 1% of the people control 60% of resources or something like we have today? Or do we have, and is this okay? It's not okay with me personally. I don't know, is it okay with you? But they will say, yeah, this is mine, don't touch it. But it's just about what kind of world do we want to envision, and I mean, if you ask kids who are gonna replace us in 1 or 2 generations, of course they don't want such a world, right? So, and what it's like even today, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like in Europe, for example, how can you make enough money to buy a flat, right? What do you have to do? Can you do anything legal? And which percentage of people can actually afford this? We are getting in a really tough situation already. Even if you look at the equality on this between different generations, and I think it's a social challenge, and we need to find a good way of distributing this wealth. Once again, here in these Nordic countries, we can learn a lot. Definitely, this is the best place in the world, among the best places in the world to learn how to do this in an ethical a way which is not hindering, which is not like something that will just kill the development and kill the ambition, because we still want this ambition to there, but we want people to feel safe and that they have enough. Soon, I mean, we know that all the projections are saying that in 4 or 5 years 70% of the jobs will be influenced somehow by these emergent technologies which are coming. And so, do we need new basic, universal basic income in 5 to 10 years? And if so, how much will it be? Will it be enough to survive? And like, what does it mean? Because once that all the cars start to be autonomous, we don't need drivers anymore. So what are these guys gonna do? Like they can play guitar, they can paint, they can go running. It's fantastic, but they need to eat something somewhere, right? So what do they eat? And how do we? Otherwise, you have riots, you have war. You have many other things which are maybe good for GDP, because war is good for GDP. You are producing something, but it's not good for development. So it's also this myth that GDP means development. It doesn't, right?
And I think actually that's something that we've kind of heard in the last few days as well. The UN has a unique role, perhaps it could even play in this growth of AI in the future, around helping with governance, around setting the frameworks that need to be put in place. Because if this is going to be something that's so fundamental, it does require an organization that has the ability to go throughout the world and actually be able to put in place the measures that it was set up to do, right? Which is to keep the world peace and to ensure that in the future that human progress would be, occurring in harmony, I suppose. All right. Let's leave it there. I think they've been telling us our time is up, but thank you very much, Robert. It was fascinating to hear about what the UNDP is doing. Thank you all. It's 5:40. You've been wonderful. Audience, you are still here. I don't know how and why, and it was really a pleasure talking to you, Nikhil. Thank you.